just hidden in this skeletal woman's bosom. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith. Welcome if you've not been here before. I'm going to take you through my April wrap-up. April was a pretty average reading month for me. I don't think it was particularly positive. I don't think it was particularly negative. I read some good stuff. I read some less than good stuff. Let's go into it, shall we? As ever, I have my incredibly low-tech notebook where I've written down everything I read this month, and I can tell you that in total, I read 16 books in April. Is it as many as I maybe would have wanted? No. Am I okay with it? Yeah. It's been very busy. I'm not going to begrudge myself not reading as many books as I wanted to. I was watching Angela's TBR recently, and she put very succinctly what I will probably blither out now, wanting to give books the time that they take to read, and I think I got very in the habit of feeling like a book should be finished in a day, because I know I can do that in certain situations when the mind is willing and ready. And actually, sometimes it's way better to just take your time. And if you read one book over a week, I'm not being paid to do this. I can do things at my own pace. So let me talk you through everything that I read in April, starting at the very beginning. I finished Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. This is the Booker Prize winner, one of the Booker Prize winners for 2020. There you go. And it is literary fiction, which isn't something that I typically read. I'm normally a sci-fi fantasy reader, as you all know. But I actually really enjoyed this. This is the story of 12 women, yes. And it's split up into 4 sections of 3 women, all of whom are interconnected in a kind of, I think when I vlogged about it, I said Love Actually kind of way. You get to hear a lot about their lives, about their pasts, about their presents, and it's a lot about how kind of various people see things in very different ways, but also the difference in upbringing, and I just found it really, really interesting. I think the blurb of it is future, it is past, it's fiction, it is history, it's a novel about who we are now. I really like that, and I think that this is well worth reading if this is something that you're into. Obviously, if you normally only read dragons, I can't say this is going to scratch that exact same itch, but I think it was a really good start to the month in terms of a palate cleanser, and yes, I would definitely recommend it, particularly if you are continuing your journey of wanting to diversify your reading. After that, I finished A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. A Dowry of Blood? Just Dowry? Yes, it's got an A. It's just hidden in this skeletal woman's bosom. This is a reimagining of the Dracula's Bride story, which sounds very cool, and it is. It's a very well-written book. It's gorgeously gothic. It feels vampiric. That's all I'm going to say there. What I will say about this one is if you are not in a place to read a book about a very, very abusive relationship in multiple different ways, this may not be the book for you. I think because it's written from the perspective of Constanta, one of these brides, after the end of a story, so looking back on it, it's not as harrowing as it might be otherwise, but yes, definitely something I would bear in mind because it's not a particularly wholesome book, shall we say. But I did think it was really well written. I loved the atmosphere of it, and I would reread it. I would read it again, just not for everyone. That's what I'll say for this one. Probably going to put it on my Halloween recommendations list, so get ready for October, everyone. After that, I finished my only audiobook of the month, which is a little bit naughty of me. I was meant to finish Robin Hobb this month and I haven't. I finished The Black Tides of Heaven by Neon Yang, and I had read this before. It had been recommended to me by a friend from work. It was a reread, but I definitely enjoyed it much more in audiobook form. As ever, it's the typical Judith thing of it made me slow down and actually take in the information. Who'd have thought that was helpful? It's a world where you don't have to declare your gender until you are older, and so we have these 2 siblings who grow up together, and there's a whole thing, their mum, the Empress, who's not a very nice lady, and they grow up and they kind of have psychic powers, and one of them has magic. I don't know how to describe the main plot of the book, because in a lot of ways it was a very quiet story, but it's also kind of about revolution, and I really want to read the rest of the series, and I think I'm going to do them by audiobook, so I might save up talking about this one until the future. Suffice to say, it was an enjoyable audiobook, not too long, liked the narrator, liked the story, would read it again. A Skinful of Shadows by Frances Hardinge was next on my list. This is a fantastic book. It's one of my favourite Frances Hardinge books for the mystery element, and I really like the main character. So we have this main character, Makepeace, who grows up kind of Puritan, hence her name, but she has the ability to, I guess, see and perceive spirits, ghosts, and one day she's out and about and she ends up with the ghost of a bear inside her, and the story is, it's so weird, and to start explaining it would be to spoil it, but it's sort of a story about the rich suck, families are weird, and it's all just set against the backdrop of the English Civil War, and it took me right back to year 9 history, which is always a fun time. And yeah, I just think Frances Hardinge writes a wonderful story. This was fantastic. I think I would have loved this as a kid. Gloriously spooky, gloriously wonderful. Yes, would recommend reading. I think often people don't realise that though Frances Hardinge is, it's sort of older middle grade tipping into YA would be where I would, if I had a child, that would be when I would give them these books. But actually I think they have enormous amounts of crossover appeal because they're just such creative worlds. And such great stories inherently that I think anyone could enjoy them. Then we get on to review copies. So I finished Victory's Greater Than Death by Charlie Jane Anders, and thinking back on this one, I liked a lot of elements of this. I liked a lot of the second half of this. I liked how diverse the book was. I liked how queer the book was. I liked the exploration of aliens and a whole bunch of other stuff that this book explores. I think that the writing in the second half of the book is really good. The first half of the book, I do not like how the book is set up. This character has to know a lot of stuff, but she can't just know it because that would be weird, except that that's sort of just what happens, is she has amnesia about the memories that she is meant to hold, but she still has all of the skills, and so she knows kind of how to behave in the world. So we don't have to do a full fish out of water thing. I don't know, it just didn't quite work for me. But about 40% of the way through, when we got past all of that, I actually really enjoyed it, and I think it's a fun YA sci-fi time, and I would read another book in the series. You wouldn't have that setup problem. I think it was still a useful read in terms of me going, okay, this is how I don't like world building to be done. So that's a useful data point, I guess. After that, I read The Prison Healer, and this was another, just a strange YA time that I don't really know how to describe. On the one hand, this is a silly YA that kind of reminded me a bit of Sarah J Maas stuff, where it's a little bit sexy. It's not, nobody's doing but it's a little bit romantic, but also very, very YA. Like the character's hair is as black as night is the thing that I always remember. And, secret magic and revolution, and it's all set in this prison. And the prison setting is what makes it kind of weird, because while you're having all of this silly elemental trials and she's got to face, earth, air, wind and fire and all of this stuff, that's not it, but you know what I mean. Will she survive, and is this person hot or not? It's also in a really horrible prison where she is constantly at threat of various different things, all the way ranging from murder to things that would require quite strong content warnings. And I just don't know. I don't know how much that meshed and how much I was just sort of I don't know, because I don't want to say this is a serious look at a YA book set in a prison, but neither can I say this is just a silly fun time, have a great time reading it. And I know that if you're a fan of Sarah J Maas, she does explore some kind of trauma ideas and things, but primarily I think people read them for a bit of escapism, and I don't think this book gave me full escapism, but nor do I think it gave me a really serious, thought-provoking time. So it's a weird one. I think I would probably check out the second book in the series just to see where things go, because I did quite enjoy how it ended. I think it's going to have the issue of it won't have as strong a setting as the first book did, so things might fall apart. That's just a thing that happens sometimes in YA series, and in adult fantasy series, to be fair. So yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on that one. I don't think I would recommend it wholeheartedly to everyone, but I think going in with that knowledge of that nuance, it might be interesting to read knowing that. So yeah, if you're planning on reading that, let me know your thoughts. After that, I finished Network Effect by Martha Wells. Yes. This is the Murderbot novel. I think it comes around about 5th in the Murderbot series. So if you haven't encountered Murderbot, basically it's a security unit android-y thing that has hacked its own governor module, and all Murderbot wants to do is sit around and watch TV shows, essentially. But Murderbot continues to get into various adventures against their will, basically. I really enjoyed this book, and I think this book made me click for Murderbot in a way that I hadn't before. And I think it's because I realised around about halfway through that because this is written from Murderbot's perspective, there is more detail than you as a person need. And I think that's really cleverly done in terms of the way that Murderbot describes fight scenes and describes various threats. Is actually, I don't necessarily need to keep track of those things, but a robot definitely would. And I think that giving myself the option to sort of not retain all of the information all at once made this book much more enjoyable for me, and it's made me want to go back and re-look at the rest of the series and get a real feel for it. But yes, I had a lot of emotions, which is always something I come to expect from a Murderbot book, even though you might not expect that. And if you haven't checked out the series already, it's probably worth going back to the first one, but know that there is a really good novel coming up. Following on from that, I read Fugitive Telemetry, which is the next novella, which has just come out actually, and this is my favourite book in the series so far, my favourite novella, my favourite anything in the Murderbot series, because it is the most murder mystery. We got the one that was meant for me, there you go. I just thought this was wonderfully written. Again, I was really in the swing of Murderbot by that point, and yeah, I had feelings and emotions and thoughts, and I had a lovely time. I would definitely recommend it. If you've been waiting for that one, just know it is out and you will enjoy it. After that, bit of a wild card, I picked up this book called Mammoth, which I've had on my shelf for a very long time, and I have read it multiple times. It is a YA contemporary. That's not what I typically read, but I needed a comfort read, and when I tell you that this book is about a plus-size teen who goes on a paleontology dig, and it's basically like the same tone, I guess, as Sisterhood of the Travelling Pants, but distilled into just like one character and this book, and also paleontology, and I absolutely love it. And it's just really cute. And really wholesome. I just enjoyed reading it. I don't know what to tell you. Can I recommend it generally to you as my audience? Probably not, but it's really sweet and I like it a lot. But then I made quite a dramatic shift from happy teen romance, paleontology, fashion time to dark, spooky, terrifying city, men made out of wax, wizards made of worms time, because I reread The Gutter Prayer, and then I reread The Shadow Saint to prepare me for reading The Broken God. These are the first 3 books in the Black Iron Legacy, not a trilogy, quintet. There are 5 books coming in this series, and I very much enjoyed The Broken God, and actually I would have been very happy to hear that it was a trilogy because I think it ends very well. This series is one of the best series, I think, for just really intensely detailed and kind of out-of-the-box thinking world building. I very much enjoy it. It's a very city-based fantasy in book 1. Book 2 branches out a little more, and book 3 branches out even further. If you haven't read any of the series yet, I would highly recommend it. I think The Gutter Prayer is fantastic. Even if you just read that one, I think you would have a good time. If you have read the first 2 and you're wondering about book 3, I would say it definitely lives up to the first 2. It's very different from book 1, which I was kind of expecting. You know, it's been a few years since The Gutter Prayer released. But what really struck me is that you get to see much further outside of the city in this book. We're getting to look more at the war as a whole, and I very much enjoyed that. But if you wanted more city focus, there's still some of that there, but not as much. I liked how it ended, and I would have been quite happy to hear that there were no more books. I'm excited to read 2 more books, but I don't know where it's going to go, and it felt like the end of an arc, and I don't know if I want to pick that arc up again, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. After that, I did another trilogy. I did the Rebel of the Sands trilogy by Alwyn Hamilton. So, Rebel of the Sands, Traitor to the Throne, and Hero at the Fall. I'd read Hero at the Fall reasonably recently and liked it, but rereading them all together, I was less sold, and I think I am at the point where I want to unhaul the series. Not because I don't find it enjoyable, not because I don't think it's well written. It's a perfectly enjoyable YA fantasy time. I'm just not that enamoured with it to the point where I want to read it again. I think I've probably read it as a series twice now, and yeah, I enjoy it. I'm just not getting emotional payoff towards the end, which I definitely got the first time I read it. I didn't connect as much with the characters this time around, so it's just not got the rereadability that I look for in things that I keep on my shelf. I still think it's a fun series, and if it's something that's sitting around on your TBR, it's a good quick one to knock off because it goes very fast. There are other desert fantasy books that I enjoy more. We're coming to the end now, which is good because I'm getting to the end of my memory card. This week, I finished The Tyrant by Seth Dickinson. This is the 3rd book in the Baru Cormorant series. Baru could end the world or fight to save it. I'm not going to go into the plot of this one because it's the 3rd book in a series, and that would be a little bit mean of me. But suffice to say, this continues with all of the very intense content warnings that come with the first 2 books, including homophobia, eugenics, very bad things happening to a lot of different people. Do I think that this book is enjoyable? That is the wrong word. I think that there's some very compelling story elements, and I definitely care a lot about these characters, and I want to see how they end up. But there is another book in this series. It's not a trilogy. Why can't things be trilogies anymore? I feel like we went through a phase of everything being duologies, and now everything is like at least 4 or 5 books. Just make things 3. It makes sense to me. It took me a long time to get into. I don't know if that's because I was coming in... I'd read book 2 last month, so there was quite a big gap. Not as big as I would have left in other times, but a fairly big gap. So I don't know if that was the case, or if just this was a slower start, but I really liked kind of the last probably 200 pages or so I really enjoyed. I want to reread the series, so it's probably a good thing that there's a fourth book coming out, because that will prompt me to do so in the future. But yes, I will have a video coming out about this series very soon, because this is towards the end of this series of Overbooked, and we are nearly there. I have read a bit of Assassin's Fate, I just haven't really finished it yet. I'll get there. And I am halfway through The Ones We're Meant to Find, but I haven't finished that, so that will be in my May wrap up, both of those, hopefully, fingers crossed. So yeah, that's where I'm at with books and things at the moment. This year so far I have read 77 books, so 16 of those were in April, which is less than fantastic. I think I need to be at 100 by the end of June, which I think will be doable. Of the 16 books this month, 7 of them were rereads. I can't remember how many rereads I had last month. Let's check. So last month I had 10 rereads, so more books were non-reread books, but my TBR, at the end of last month I checked, it was 46 books, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get it under, I think I might have even said under 30, which is ludicrous, but let's hope I said under 40. I didn't achieve that. It is at 44. So I have brought it down by a grand total of 2 books. Never mind. But that being said, I have big plans to read down my NetGalley TBR in May. If you haven't watched that TBR, you can do so. And I've already started on that. So I'm hoping that we will be in a better place in the May wrap up, that I'll be able to say, yes, look, it's definitely gone down. Fingers crossed. Fantastic. Let me know in the comments below what your favourite book of April has been, or your least favourite book. I would love to know. I think my favourite was probably Fugitive Telemetry, I think. Yeah, let's say that. And my least favourite... Oh, there was nothing I really disliked. Can I say the first 40% of Victory's Greater Than Death? I think that was my least favourite reading experience of the month. But yes, let me know all of those things down in the comments below. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews and to another video. No, let's zoom out. Let's zoom in. I'm gonna keep turning around. I need a table here. What did I do with the other one? Where did I put it?